In this episode, we're headed to the sleepy Berkshire countryside. I'll be visiting TripAdvisor's #1 tourist attraction in Finchampstead, Siren Craft Brew. Opened in 2013 by former IT entrepreneur Darron Anley, the brewery came out of the gate running and quickly made a name for itself. In the ensuing years, Siren has gone from strength to strength, garnering countless accolades, including the coveted Champion Beer of Britiain. Welcome to No Pants During the Pandemic. Hi, I'm Kevin Brooks, and this is No Pants During the Pandemic. Today I'm speaking with Darron Anley from Siren Craft Brew in Berkshire, England. Hey Darron, how you doing, man?
I'm good, thanks Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing just great. Why don't we just jump right into things, and why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm Darron Anley from Siren Craft Brew. I'm the founder of this brewery based in the south of England. I've actually been in IT for pretty much all of my life, really, my entire working age.
So how does an IT guy switch directions and open a brewery?
And it seemed like a good idea at the time, I think. I wasn't a massive fan of what I was doing. The business that I ran was an IT security company, which is a little bit like insurance sales, but we were buying other people's products and putting them together and selling them to big corporates. And I've been a massive fan of beer for a long time, probably longer than it was legal for me to be. So obviously being in the UK, cask beer is a huge thing. And really until Brewdog came along, that was pretty much our entire scene. But then I stumbled across Brewdog and what they were doing with massive impact on flavours and high ABVs, and really it got me hooked, to be honest. And when I sold my business in 2011, I was in this position where the idea of setting up my own brewery felt that was something that I'd love to do. The actual idea of going to make something, create something was pretty scary, but it was also quite a fun thing to try and approach.
You know, it's a lot of work to open a brewery, and it's obviously a different skill set than what you had. So, where did you go to get, information on opening a brewery?
I sold my business in, August pretty much, and I was supposed to be doing nothing for a period of time, at least taking a year or so out. That didn't quite happen. I actually was on a brewing course learning how to brew within 3 weeks. And so really after that, it was then just trying to get as much research done as I possibly could. And then I actually headed out to the States in, I think it was March or April, something like that. I went to the Craft Brewers Conference in San Diego.
And you got some pretty good advice while you were over there at CBC, right?
I did. It was a great thing to be at. I didn't really know anybody in the brewing scene in the UK at all. So, getting on a plane all by myself to head out to San Diego and then walk into this keynote speech, which was 4,000 people, many of them with massive beards. And you guys in America, you like to shout and clap and whoop and holler when people speak.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
But I learned so much from that. Walking into this almost evangelical kind of environment for the keynote speech was just was pretty disorientating, but it was great fun, and I learned a lot. But I also met some great people. I met Jasper from Camden and got some great bit of advice from him, which was whatever size brewery you're thinking about in terms of kit, if you can afford to double it and if you can really afford to treble it, because it just takes away that pain of growing. And I was lucky enough to be in a position where we were thinking about 10 barrels, and we actually ended up going for, it was actually 35 US barrels was our starting point. But I also bumped into a guy called Kelly Ryan, who was the head brewer at Thornbridge at the time. And he gave his bit of advice was, doesn't matter how good your home brewing is, get a professional brewer. It's just going to take so much pain out of your early startup. And, he was such a gentleman. He did more than just give me that bit of advice. He actually went on and did a bit of a Twitter campaign for me and put out quite a few tweets to say, I know that I met this guy looking to give somebody carte blanche to create some really interesting recipes, and he's looking to do something pretty punchy, so get in touch.
And as a result of the Twitter campaign, you actually got your first brewer out of it.
I did, yeah. So I had quite a few people apply, a few people I still speak to in the industry now, which is great. But one of them was a guy called Ryan Witter-Merrithew, who at the time, he was an American, started off at Duck Rabbit Brewery. And he came over to Denmark, brewing in this little island called Faenu, where he was brewing some stuff for Faenu, but also he was contract brewing for Mikella and for Evil Twin, brewing some of their more, they're really kind of way out stuff, the stuff that DeProof wouldn't have brewed for them at the time. And I went over to Copenhagen to interview him. We had a great time, really kind of talked through what I wanted, what he wanted. And it fitted really, really well. And his experience of, I can't remember what it was. I think he'd brewed something like about 300 different styles in the last year and a bit at Faenu, which just really fitted with what I wanted to do at Siren.
And when did Siren finally open?
So we actually started brewing in February, if I recall. I think was the first brew day, February 2013. So pretty cold day in our warehouse, the two of us. But that was how Siren started.
Why the name Siren?
That's a good question. It's really challenging trying to find a name that can pass through copyright, that can mean something and hasn't already been taken before, especially in the beer world, because, now it's going to be even more difficult. You think about the amount of breweries there are and the amount of beers that have had copyright applied to them. I was going back and forth with a company that was trying to help us make sure we did it properly and tied it into a story and a theme that kind of really worked and had legs, can carry on. And one of the things that I was really bought into was the whole idea that brewing and music were reasonably similar, in that with music you've got 8 notes, and it's how you put those notes together. You can put them together in a myriad different ways to achieve so many different outcomes. And it's the same with brewing. Technically, you've got 4 ingredients, and it's how you put them together that can have so many different outcomes in so many different ways: colours, aromas, mouthfeel, so on and so forth. So I wanted to try and tie in something off of that kind of idea, that musical idea. So we were chatting around things around chorus and musical things and so on. And then we kind of hit on this thing when we were discussing melody and chorus, sirens. What about the sirens of Greek mythology, known for singing and luring the sailors in. But that temptation aspect really, really worked for me, because that was pretty much my thing. I was really not supposed to be setting up another business. I was supposed to be taking a bit of a time out and having a bit more of a chilled out, at least a year or so. But it didn't happen, and I just kept getting dragged into this idea of I wanted to do something. I wanted to create something and make something. The IT businesses that I'd run before were all about buying other people's products, selling other people's products, and bolting them together and creating solutions around them. Whereas this was actually making something.
The brewery's located in Finchampstead.
It is, yeah.
What made you pick the town? Oh, actually, village, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think town's the right word for it. My wife calls it a town, but I call it a village. It was about a quarter of a mile from my house. That's pretty much it. The original thinking was very much that it was going to be a production brewery. Nothing to do with people coming to the brewery and building a tap room around it or anything like that. So it didn't matter where we were. And actually, really, if I'd have followed that logic through, the sensible thing would have gone and stuck it somewhere much further away than where we are. We're in an area where property costs are high, wages are high. We get no help from the government whatsoever in terms of grants or anything like that.
What is the village like?
There is absolutely bugger all in Finchampstead at all. There is nothing. There is a small grocery store, there is a small church, and that is about it.
Excellent.
But we've got some nice walks around the area that are pretty easy to get to. So it's not quite rural. We're about 30-40 miles west of London and a couple of miles south of Reading. So you can get to Reading in no time, which is got everything you need.
I remember I looked it up when I went to visit years ago and was like, looked it up in Wikipedia entry, and I'm like, there's nothing there. And I did it this morning to see if anything had popped up, and I'm like,
no, nothing.
They also include the people of note who live there or have lived there, and I'm like, I don't even recognize any of these names.
No, there's a story. So the brewery is at the end of a road called the 9 Mile Ride. And somebody was telling me that the reason the road got built was something to do with, I can't remember which king it was now, but he basically wanted to have a road built from Windsor Castle to there and made it nice and easy for him to get to his mistress. It was at the end.
Nice. Oh, good for him.
Don't know whether it's true, but it's a good story. It's about the only story I've got for Finch hamsters. So.
Is Windsor Castle 9 miles away then?
No, it's a little bit further. Not much, but it's pretty close.
So I guess that means you're close to London, which is pretty good, being that it's the largest market in the country.
Yeah, being close to London is great for us. We actually deliver directly ourselves to London. We can also get into a couple of the other major markets, such as Bristol, Birmingham, and the South Coast. And I think that is a massive plus for us in that we're able to, I guess, control our own destiny to a certain extent in that respect.
You put the brewery into an industrial estate, right?
Yeah, I mean, we put the brewery into industrial estate. We put a tap yard in there, but that didn't come for a while. And in all fairness, we didn't give it the love that it probably could have had. But we've turned that around. We've actually now got a lot of houses going up around the brewery. And we've expanded as you do over an 8-year period. We've now got a dedicated tap room area. It's the best that we could do considering the spaces that we've got. So it's about 800 square feet. So it's not massive. We've got a really loyal, passionate bunch of locals that come to us really regularly. We get that mix from like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of our locals. Saturdays and Sundays tend to be some locals, and then a lot of people coming out of town for a full day experience, and it's great. It's an enriching experience actually. The tap yard is one of the fun things. I really wish I'd built more around the brewery right from the start, because there's a lot of enjoyment to come from that. Yeah, we're trying to grow that at the moment. We've been trying to shut down the warehouse on a Friday to create more space so we can get more people in there. So that when it's like like it is now in the winter and it's raining and it's cold, people know they've got a place to sit. We've actually just bought 2 sea containers that we're in the process of having a gap between them, putting a roof over it, then cutting holes in the side to make a really nice space in there so that they can come and get their beer in the tap room, and if we're fully actually in there, then they can go and sit in there, and it'd be a nice homely industrial kind of looking place, and it should be something we can add a bit of atmosphere to, and get more and more people to it on a weekend.
Right away you guys made a pretty big splash. The first year you were the number 2 new brewery in the world, behind Arizona Wilderness. In that year it was a good group of people. In the UK you had Weird Beard and Pressure Drop. In the US I think Modern Times and Trillium. If you want to call it a class of 2013, it was pretty darn good group of people.
That's a great bunch of people to be associated with, isn't it? I mean, couldn't ask for it. Those guys are still rocking it all right now, aren't they? So yeah.
A couple of years later, Rate Beer once again calls you the best brewery in England, and then in 2018, Broken Dream wins Champion Beer of Britiain at the Great British Beer Festival.
Oh, do you know that? I mean, that's still a pretty surreal experience, if I'm honest. It's a great feather in the cap. I mean, the fact that such a big out there beer has won a very traditional competition is amazing. But also that year we got a silver for Odyssey at the World Beer Cup. That was a real win. You got to look at the competition that we were up against. If you look at the barrel and the wood aging competition and the people we were up against there, we got a silver with Brewery coming in top. That was, that's a hell of an achievement. So yeah, 2018 was a heck of a year for us. Winning the Supreme Champion Beer of Britiain has been great for Broken Dream. It has really helped put it on the map, and as a beer, it's tasting better than it ever has.
How does it feel to be one of the, I can't say old kids, because you've got really old breweries in that country, but at least for the craft side, how does it feel to be one of the elder statesmen?
It's a challenge that I still like, because I think one of the things that is definitely very evident is you still have to be vibrant. You still have to be challenging yourself and challenging what you do, and the scene as it is right now is definitely making sure you do that, and I think that's great, and that's one of the things that I do love about this business. If we were just sitting there resting our laurels on the fact that we've got 5 core beers, that'd be pretty boring. We are having to and want to keep invigorating ourselves and keep finding new ways of approaching challenges and problems and ways of doing things.
Would you like to run through, at least your core beers and then maybe some of the things you guys are better known for?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So our core beer range now starts, and I'm going to do the UK thing. I'm going to start at an ABV. So we have Yulu, which is a Earl Grey pale ale that has a touch of lemon zest in it. We're leaning on the Earl Grey more for its bergamot notes rather than the tea notes. 3.6%, super spritzy, super bright. Next up, we were playing with this beer called Lumina, which was going to be a gluten-free 4.2%, soft, hazy, beautiful mouthfeel, nice and balanced, tropical fruit, but nothing too overt in any direction, just refreshing and drinkable. And we launched that as a new product this year. Soundwave is our IPAs, Citra, Simcoe, Columbus and Chinook, proper old school hops. A reasonable amount of bitterness to it, nothing too overt, not original West Coast. It's developed a bit of a haze over the years. And then you go to Calypso, which is our dry hop sour, super simple, lager malt, wheat malt, kettle soured over the weekend. And then we dry hop it with different hops every time we do it. And then Broken Dream, which is our 6.5% breakfast stout with lactose, oats and coffee from a local roastery in London called Clemson's. Outside of that, we've got a number of different things we do throughout the year. We do a Project Barista every year, which is celebrating coffee and beer, where we'll take people on a journey through 4 different styles of beers, trying to showcase how coffee can be involved in those beers.
And you guys just released your Caribbean Chocolate Cake, which is a collaboration you guys originally did with Wayne Wambles from Cigar City, right?
That's right, yeah, we did. Ryan managed to convince him to come over and do some stuff with us because they were good friends through their home brewing networks and so on. He wanted to come up with this kind of idea, a Caribbean cake, a tropical stout idea. He came up with this fantastic recipe, which was really low on the roast, bit of lactose, cream and body, touch of oats, not massive, but loads of really, really expensive cacao. Wayne is really into using wood, and he was playing around with cypress wood, which adds a vanilla wafer. Yeah, and these spirals that we imported. So actually, as an ingredient bill at the time, this was the most expensive beer that we had ever produced, ever. And it was a huge hit, went down so well. It was a great beer. We've continued to brew that beer, and it's now become a real staple for us every year. We'll bring out a range of beers, including the original Caribbean Chocolate Cake, some kind of a variant, a barrel-aged version, and what we call the Death By, which also includes a bit of Amburana wood, which is, again, another one of Wayne's passion. And it's great to put that out there, and we've sold out so much of it inside of a week. It's nice to see that going on in this kind of climate. And then, we do a lot of other seasonals and one-offs that are just all part of the annual release calendar. We've got a lot of barrels. We've probably got about 400 different barrels in our barrel room. Everything from bourbon to Armagnac, tequila, rum, brandy, port, banyuls, all sorts of stuff. And in fact, actually, before we brewed any of our core beers, the first beer we actually brewed was Maiden. And the idea was, first journey, maiden voyage, all that kind of stuff. The intention behind that was going to be our anniversary beer. We brewed this big 11% American-style barley wine. We were going to put it into this mix of different spirit barrels, and we'd come back to it in a year, we brew a fresh batch, and we taste all of the different components and see if we could create a blend that improved the sum of the parts. And then whatever we took out, so if it was only 20% of that barrel, but 80% of that barrel and 30% of that barrel, we'd always leave something of the old liquid in there.
Solara, yeah.
That's it, yeah, exactly. So we had no idea where that was going to go, whether it was even going to work. And it was a pretty expensive project to be doing as a brewery for your first ever brew. Just the cost of the barrels alone, and the fact that you put this huge amount of grain into it, time into it, and it was going to sit there for a year. But it's worked. We've now got, I think, over 50 to 60 barrels with Maiden in it every year. I think we've got about 8,000 litres of Maiden sat in barrels at various stages. It's a great project. It's my favourite part of the year. First beer that gets brewed on January, whatever the first working day of the year is Maiden.
Have you done the blending and a release for maybe?
Yeah, so the blending day, we had a few of our key customers came down for the day, and they'll come in and they'll help us put together this blend, and it's a fun part of the calendar. So that was actually back end of January. So the beer got put into bottles ready for our anniversary, which was something like the 17th of March. The UK shut down about 5 days later. In fact, I was doing a number of different tours around the UK doing events for the maiden launch that week before we all got shut down. So the beer got let out into the wild about a week before shutdown. And but not luckily, I mean, it pretty much all sold out before we hit that stage anyway. So.
Your bigger problem will be 2021's version.
We've got a plan for how we're going to do our socially distanced, blending day. So I think we'll still make that happen. I don't see any changes to it in that respect.
Let's go back to March for a second. The UK shuts down. What do you and Siren, immediately do?
Shit a brick. Oh man, yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Can you keep that? No, probably not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, at the time we had 350 grand's worth of keg beer sat in stock. Yeah, we're not that big a business. We were owed 650 grand by our trade customers. We were sat on probably about another 300 to 350 grand's worth of raw ingredients or beer in tank. And I remember going around talking to everybody and just saying, look, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know how we're going to get through this. I'm going to just do everything I can. I stopped taking a salary at that point. I just said, look, at some point, guys, I'm going to have to look at working a way to try and make sure we don't lose anybody, but we might have to be creative on the way we all get paid. But luckily, the government brought out this furlough scheme, and that was a huge, huge relief for us. It didn't mean everything was all right by any stretch of the imagination, but it certainly bought us time to see what we can do and figure out how we can do something that would just keep the money coming in. Landlords that were refusing to budge on their rent. We have loans and asset finance that were refusing to budge. Some people were. So our bank was incredibly helpful and wanting to work with us. I'm just so grateful for the approach they've taken with us. But it was super tough time. Yeah, pretty scary. Not a time I'll forget for a long time, I think.
The tap yard had to close. Yep. And you stopped production.
Pretty much all production stopped, or warehousing stopped. But one of the things that we picked up in the UK, which I guess is different to the US, was our online trade side of things. That's been an absolute lifesaver for us. It's been a real godsend. The amount of passionate people, our customers, those guys absolutely came to our rescue. Whereas maybe a really good month for us on our web shop might have been about 20 grand. I think in March we did about 60, which was phenomenal. That doesn't cover the 450 grand that we normally expect to get from the trade for that month, but it's a super helpful, and it's good to see. But what happened was there were a few other parts of the trade that were seeing similar uptick. So some of the people that were very active on online the website sales of things really started to pick up. So we have a subscription service called Beer 52. They really weighed in and tried to help the UK brewers and really put a lot of business our way to try and make sure that they were supporting us as best as they could. But our website went absolutely nuts. So we soon started bringing quite a few of our tap yard guys back in to help pack boxes. We went from 70 to 90 to 150. I think we peaked at about 170 grand in a month, which our peak in the year before in Christmas was 25 grand, I'm sure, somewhere around that kind of area. So a massive change. I think around about June, some of the on-trade started to get creative, and they started finding out they were able to do takeouts, so growler fills and stuff like that. So we started to get rid of a little bit of the keg stuff that we had. We did some mini kegs, and slowly but surely we found ourselves getting ourselves back onto a more sustainable footing.
I want to add one thing before I forget, and it's a silly thing, and it's a difference between an American vocabulary and English vocabulary. In the United States, the term scheme.
Yeah.
It's it's an idea, it's a plan, but in the United States, it has a negative connotation.
Okay.
So it's more like an evil scheme, an evil plan. So scheme is just its bare bones. It's a plan. It's a a thing by the government where they paid 80% of
Yeah.
the salary of your employees up to a certain point in order to basically stay home
Yep.
and not spread this anymore. And that allowed the frontline workers to basically be able to get in and out of places easier. It was a brilliant thing and a big Band-Aid.
Massive.
For all you guys.
Oh, yeah.
That ended in October, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone through a number of different iterations, and those are the challenges that are part of the ongoing thing that keeps it all challenging, and means that I used to have a lot of hair up here, not anymore.
You looked like me.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, at the beginning of 2020. I wish I did. I didn't, but yeah, it has changed along the way. So I think it went from when we were in total lockdown to a point where there was then supposedly a tail off, so they would start paying less and less, and we would pay more. And then obviously we've now gone back into lockdown, and so that whole scheme is now, after a bit of kicking and screaming, the government's come back to the table with, okay, we'll pay you 80% again. In some respects, the government has worked incredibly well for us, and it's been great. I mean, that whole scheme. Where it's not working is our on-trade customers. If they've got no income, they have absolutely no income, but they are expected to pay rent and rates. So every time you're seeing these changes to legislation and how they're dealing with lockdown, it's hard.
The pubs had an okay summer. In some places they were allowed to not fully open, but open a little bit more. Now here we are heading into the colder months. England locked back down for 2 weeks.
4
weeks, sorry. England locked down for 4 weeks. And now your places are allowed to reopen, but there's different tiers. Can you explain, how that all works?
No. I can't explain it, no, because it's all a load of... so basically, they've tiered the country into risk areas. There's a tier 1, 2 and 3. Tier 1, you could do most things, but still back to the COVID safe, as in social distancing, but that's about it. Tier 2, you can do pretty much most things. You can get a haircut, you can go to the shop. What you cannot do is go and have a beer, unless you're eating a substantial meal. And when you've had your substantial meal, you must bugger off. And if you're in tier 3, you can't even do that. So you can have takeaway. And I think, from a hospitality point of view, there are definitely some challenges around how they've approached it. As in, you could go to a ticketed event and have a beer with no substantial meal. You could go to a theatre and have a beer. It does feel a little bit like what we call the wet-led pub. So a bar that doesn't serve food is being unfairly singled out at the moment as an area of risk, and it's just not the case. That they haven't been able to provide the evidence to back up why they've done what they've done. They keep citing studies that go back to March and April, all in other countries and all prior to anybody doing. The UK, our pubs have spent a huge amount of money, and in most cases, you're always going to get the odd site, the odd pub, the local pub that might just take the mick with regards to how they do things in terms of whether they stick to the rules from being COVID secure, but most places have been incredibly sensible about it. So it feels like we've all done, the on-trade, the hospitality industry has done an awful lot to get ourselves in the right shape to be one of the safest places to go to, but the government seems to feel that that's not right. Once you've had a beer, you're going to lose your inhibitions.
And then there's tier 4, right?
Yeah, which I think just means we're a little bit more stuffed than we were in tier 3, if I'm honest.
And for the pub industry, which has really not had the best decade, we'll say, this could be bad news for an entire sector of British industry, but British tradition too.
Yeah, it's a real challenging time. There are people that they're not coming back. They can't because they didn't have the reserves of cash. The landlord wanted to make sure they got paid throughout this whole time when they were being mandated by the government to shut down, which, you can understand that if they've got a mortgage to pay, it's, these things go around, but, how we couldn't build a system that would have worked for landlord to tenants all across the country, I'm sure that a solution could have been thought through. It's going to take a knock, but, we're resilient. We're going to give it a damn good go to try and make sure that as many of us are still standing as possible.
So what did you do during at least the initial shutdown?
Firstly, if I remember rightly, I think my wife had what she thought was symptoms. So for the first week, I spent my first week or two, a week and a half, I think, pretty much with these stuck in my ears, looking at a screen for something like 14 hours a day on call after call after call. It was hugely exhausting, just trying to figure out what we're going to do, but unfortunately also mostly remotely because my wife wasn't well and thought that was the best thing to do. You had to keep out of the way. We just did our best to try and shut down where we could, and then as things started opening up, what you can do is just look at what's in front of you, figure out what are the opportunities, what are the spaces we can play in and do well at, and find some way to create some revenue for us. And then once we got to this point where we were, I don't want to say we were doing okay, but we were definitely in a position that was better than most. We kind of felt that it was best for us to try and spend some time and effort shining lights on some of the local businesses that didn't have that opportunity. So we try to just look at a few different opportunities to talk to a few of our local businesses and see how we could help them with the power of what we had coming into us. We knew we had people coming onto our website looking at what we were doing every couple of weeks to see if there was something they wanted to buy and just to stock up on some new beers. So we tried some stuff with a local business that has done some catering at our tap yard, trying to sell some of their food for customers to buy through our website and to be able to then heat up at home. I read up about this escape room company in Reading. They were really well known and really liked for their escape room puzzles being really creative. And they had just been absolutely dicked by their landlord. And I read about it and I just felt so sorry. So I just called them out and said, look, I don't know how we can help, but I've seen you've got this online thing that you've put up. Why don't, if you've got a way of putting it on our website, you charge what you want and we'll just put the money back to you for a voucher to play this game, because people are loving that sort of stuff. We've got a platform of something like 8,000-9,000 people that are buying reasonably regularly off of our website. How can maybe we can help you as a local business? And they actually ended up, bless them. They said, look, we don't want to do that. We're just so blown away by the fact that you've approached us. We're going to create something that's special and specific to you guys. So they did. They created this whole deadlock escape room thing based around the sirens of Greek mythology. And it was so cool. And it's not turned their life around or saved their bacon, but it's just been able to give them something and a little bit of something back. So we've tried to concentrate on those kind of things. Try and remember that we're all a bit of a community and keep building on that side of things.
What's next for Siren heading into the winter and a lot more question marks?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it?
Sorry.
We are trying to set ourselves up and plan for not a normal year, but trying to figure out what we're going to do in terms of special projects, special releases, the fun things that people really like to buy into, so things like our Project Barista and all those sorts of things. What we can't do at the moment is plan anything around events. A couple of things that we have done is during the downtime, we've really made the most of the quieter periods to really set off some of the stuff that needed to get done to improve our processes around the brewery, so that as we grow and increase the volume, we're in a position to actually pull back on some of the work required for our brewers. So they've actually got an easier, smoother ride of putting out more beer, actually costs them less effort, less time. We've invested heavily in our lab facilities, which is something we've been trying to do for a long time, but it's getting that time to really focus on getting the building work done, getting the project stuff put together for what bits of kit you're going to do, what are the processes we're going to run, how are we going to do that. So we've been really busy doing all of that.
So Darron, thanks for spending all this time with me. I wish you the best of luck during all of this, and please keep in touch with me and let me know what's going on there at Siren.
I will do. Thanks very much for having me on the show. Really appreciate it, and best of luck for you too.
And I can't wait to come visit you. It's been far too long since I've been in Finchampstead.
To come and see our one co-op.
Exactly. Talk to you soon, man.
All right, cheers, man. Take care.
Bye-bye. If you'd like to learn more about Siren or order some of their great beer, head on over to the Siren website. The link is in this video's description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.